I might just address a few issues there. The whole purpose of this is a patient safety issue. I have to correct a couple of different things. Let me go through the patient safety issue. So the whole approach is to try to make Limerick have enough capacity to have the same flow as other well-run hospitals like Waterford. Limerick is an extremely well-run hospital now in the last 12 months. The changes that Ian Carter and Catherine Peters and Sandra Broderick have brought in are really meaningfully different, and they deserve, and all of the teams working there, all of the consultants, all of the nurses, the hospital is a different place in terms of how it's run. It's really important, and we're having a major, it's having a major impact on patient safety. So what do? We do a range of different things all of the time. And it's not just Limerick, but a range of different things. We're trying to decant as much as possible from the acute hospital so that people who are acutely unwell can get the best care there. So we're doing a couple of different things. One, moving everything that we can in terms of outpatient appointments to primary care facilities. So I met, for example, one of the ENT consultants, Joe Hughes, who's now running his clinics in the primary care centre in Newcastle West. That is exactly the sort of commitment to sláinte care that we are seeing from consultants there. He does not need to do his surgery in the hospital, bring people there in terms of parking costs, all of the different challenges. He can do that in Limerick, in Newcastle West. That is one of the many things that we are asking people to do differently that is happening in the Midwest. We do have an elective flex, not just in Limerick, but in every hospital, in every season, not just in the winter season. And we do that to account for a couple of different things. There is always a Christmas-winter flex. Then you have to intersect when is the flu season going to hit. Flu season this year, it changes every year, is likely to hit really hard in the 2 weeks over Christmas. Normally it's a little bit later. So you have to adjust and adapt to that. If you haven't gotten your flu vaccine, please get your flu vaccine. Even if you're not going to get the flu, even if you're not at risk, you can stop its transmission. We know from the Southern Hemisphere that this is going to be a hard flu, and it's going to be an early flu, and I'm asking people to get the flu vaccine because that is the single biggest thing you can do to contribute to your loved ones' well-beings and to the healthcare staff in Limerick, their opportunities there. So we always flex, and so there is a change in October this year, November, they do it all the time, but there's no change to the electives in St. John's. Like, electives are still continuing in St. John's, and that is the model that we have in Limerick to enable continuing elective procedures. We're also then opening a surgical hub there, again to do elective procedures, to take away the pressure. But the reality is, if you are bringing, to take away again, things that shouldn't be happening in an acute hospital that can happen elsewhere. Why do we do this? Why do we have an elective flex? There isn't a single person, I hope, in this room that would think it was acceptable to bring in an elective surgery into an overcrowded hospital, thereby creating danger to the people already there and the person who is coming in potentially for a very sensitive surgery. You try to do it somewhere else, you try to do it at a different time. You don't bring people into an already overcrowded hospital. And our first priority has to be patient safety and the well-being of the hospital. That is why it is so important that all of the reforms that I am trying to push through since January in terms of weekend working, weekend rostering, weekend discharging, it is to make sure that we have a safe patient flow and that we don't have backups of people on trolleys on Mondays and Tuesdays. That's not just in Limerick, that's in every part of the country. And all of those things have to go together. All of those reforms have to sit together to have a hospital that has a good flow all of the time. Is it possible? Yes. Waterford have no people on trolleys for the last 5 years and they don't cancel elective surgeries. Why? Because they have their patient flow absolutely tip-top. When I look at the trolleys every day, Limerick is the only place that I will give a pass to in terms of having red trolleys because I know they have an acute bed capacity. It is not their processes. It is an acute bed capacity issue. In relation to the trolley numbers, it is absolutely clear that Limerick is persistently better, whether you count it on the INMO figures, whether you count it on the HSE figures. And I might get this slightly wrong, but they are two very different things. INMO figures count the people who are in the emergency room generally. The HSE figures count the people on trolleys. There are slightly different ways of counting, but in Limerick in particular, of all of the hospitals, we have more people self-referring to the hospital than in any other region. So those numbers are always going to be much higher. But you have to look at the trend, right? Whichever one you count by, fine. But you have to look at the trend, and the trend is persistently lower. And not just that, and I have to end this idea that Limerick is the worst hospital in terms of emergency departments. Today, I'm telling you, and this is persistent right throughout November, Galway, and I will happily call them out, Galway, St Vincent's in my own constituency, just at the edge of my own constituency in Dublin, and Cork are persistently worse in their hospital trolley figures than Limerick, and they don't have the same bed issues that Limerick has. And I'm going to leave, for the benefit of senators who I know who from the region, for the benefit of senators, this figure. Like, for example, yesterday, Wednesday, there was 28 people on trolleys on the HSE figures at 8 a.m. yesterday morning. There were 42 in Galway. On Tuesday, there were 27 in Limerick, there were 50 in Galway, there was 35 in Vincent's. It's persistently worse in other hospitals. So we have to get away from the idea that Limerick is the place that's the most dangerous, that's the most under pressure. It isn't actually, as a consequence of two things. One, the greatly improved processes, and two, the new bed block. And we need more beds, and there's no question about that. But the other hospitals have more to do, and they don't have the same presentation pressures, demographic pressures, or bed capacity pressures. And it's important to just put that in context. So I really want, in particular, want to compliment the management there for the extraordinary work that they do. Am I committed to it? Every morning at 11 o'clock, there's a trolley call. The CEO of the HSE, the senior management of the HSE, the regional executive officers, now the hospital managers, it depends on who's there. And just twice this week, doing, cabinet meetings, everything else, I joined the call. I joined the call in the background. I listened in particular what specific nuances are going on in each hospital. And I do that because I recognise that there are some hospitals, like Vincent's, like Cork, who have had an up and down experience there over the last month, where they're just not landing it, they're just not getting it right, and persistently, and then there's other hospitals that might be under a flu pressure or an RSV pressure for a day or two and then recover. And they're all slightly different issues. It helps me track the delayed transfers of care, it helps me track what's happening in the community, where the beds are going to. One of the really important investments that we're having here is the additional investment in Ennis and Nina, sorry I said them wrong. But the beds, for example, we have 81 beds in Nina, and our plan is to put another 48, a 50% capacity increase, 62 in Nina and an additional 27, and I think 95 in St John's with an additional 42 coming. But it's really, as much as that, it's about the service delivery in those different hospitals, to try to do everything we can to avoid the need for people to come to UHL unless they are seriously unwell or have been in a trauma situation. But for routine treatment, for outpatient appointments, for elective processes, we actually don't want them to be in Limerick in the same way that we don't want them to be in other acute hospitals. So we are across this. We have an urgent bed capacity issue. I would ask for all of your support that when we put in planning applications, that you do your best to make sure that we minimise the objections to those applications, that we get the best out of the site that we can, that we push as hard as we can on that site, that we deliver again on option B as close as possible to that, and that we look intelligently with all of the best information that we have about how to approach a model, the option C construct, and how we do that with optimum site location, optimal clinical location, and optimal hospital size, recognising that we are learning more and more about better hospital efficiency over time from our international experience and from our own learning here. So there is a real commitment to the people of the Midwest, from the hospital management, from the people that are working there, from everybody here, from myself. I'm invested in this on a day-to-day basis. Over the weekend, over last weekend, I get a text at 8 a.m, 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. every single day of my weekend, every single weekend, so that I can track exactly where every hospital is and where I see a hospital going into difficulty. So am I committed? I promise you I am. I promise you I really am. I know exactly what's going on to the best that I can in the 29 hospitals at any given time. Last weekend, I think at one point there was 57 people on trolleys in 29 hospitals. And then it creeps up over Sunday night into Monday and Monday night into Tuesday. So I really do know. But Limerick is doing really comparatively well. Mightn't feel like that if you're there in Limerick today. They have the 7th longest wait times of all of the hospitals, but it's not the longest wait time. And they don't have the worst hospital trolley presentation. And that's because of the work of the people in Limerick and because of the 96 beds. So my priority is to deliver us more beds as quickly as possible and to put in all of the supporting architecture to make sure that we can bring people out of Limerick. We are genuinely committed to this, and we will look at the option. We will prioritise A and B coming up to Christmas, and we will all look together at the opportunities for option C in the new year. And you're right, I didn't say those things at the meeting yesterday. I was not correctly quoted. We will look at option C intelligently and in a paced way in the new year, when we have made what HIQA have asked us to do for the people of the Midwest, our commitments in respect of option A and B, and put real teeth to that. Is that okay?